A low, turf-roofed longhouse rises slowly from the mist, like something ancient remembering how to breathe. Its timbers glisten with dawn dew, and from a narrow gap in the roof, smoke curls skyward lazy, blue, alive. Moss creeps up the stone foundation, and frost crackles faintly underfoot as the camera approaches. The longhouse doesn't just sit in the landscape, it belongs to it. Inside, 5 figures gather close around a central hearth, their faces obscured by flicker and shadow. The flames throw gold across plank walls, where silhouettes dance in steady rhythm with the fire's hiss. A soft thump echoes as wool-draped boots move over packed earth. One hand smooths rushes along the floor with practiced grace, then reaches for a wooden ladle dripping broth back into a simmering pot. The air is thick with scent peat smoke, venison roasting low, damp wool, and the tank of last night's coals. Above, the roof pole groans slightly, exhaling with them. A child's whisper fades beneath the hum of fire. Step inside a world where every breath mingled with smoke and laughter, where the crackle of embers was life itself. Tonight we'll live the rhythms of a Viking longhouse, its genius, its grime, and its guarded secrets. The longhouse door creaks against frost-swollen hinges. Runes carved deep into the frame glisten with pre-dawn rime, their grooves holding on to winter's breath. Snow swirls faintly at the threshold as Ragnar the farmer steps inside, his furs dusted with white, shoulders low from hours spent watching the dark edge of the woods. Warmth greets him not with heat, but with light. The soft orange glow of a hearth stretches across the floor, pooling like honey on the packed earth. The air smells of old smoke and sleep. Near the fire, Astrid the weaver hums, voice low, rhythmic, a lullaby shaped from old melody and quiet prayer. Her child stirs in her arms, sighing once before falling still again. Ragnar kneels beside her. With careful hands, he feeds birch twigs into the hearth. Sparks leap like fireflies, startled into flight before dissolving into smoke. He doesn't speak, but his glance toward Astrid lingers tired, grateful, fragile. Beyond the walls, a distant clangor, blacksmith's hammer striking iron. Olaf's forge. The sound echoes once, then twice, through the beams overhead. Not noise, but heartbeat. The door opens again with a whisper. Ingrid the healer steps in, her shawl stiff with frost. She sets down a wooden bowl near the fire. Steam curls from its nettle broth. She doesn't speak, but her eyes say enough. Ragnar nods. Astrid shifts the baby closer. In the far corners of the hall, shapes begin to stir. A child turns beneath a fir. Dogs stretch, paws scraping earth. A cat emerges from shadow and weaves through ankles before leaping to a rafter beam. And then, the first strand of dawn. Light threads down through the smoke hole above, brushing across the baby's face like a blessing. No one moves. The house listens. Astrid lifts her gaze toward the door. Her lullaby falls to silence. And then, soft, steady, we endure together. The smoke lifts, the fire murmurs, and, for a heartbeat, the longhouse holds its breath, poised between night and day. The longhouse flickers away and, with a jolt, we smash cut to a sleek, suburban living room. Soft, LED lights hum against cold grey walls. A digital thermostat glows, 22 degrees Celsius. A toddler tips cereal onto a plush rug. Mom scrolls TikTok, sipping protein coffee from a branded bottle. Dad's voice echoes from upstairs, muffled and sharp. Check your screen time. The house is sprawling 10 rooms, each glowing, each silent. Breakfast bowls teeter on countertops. The hum of central heating blends with a faint Spotify beat, leaking through hallway static. Average modern home, 150 square meters, 8 to 10 rooms. Viking Longhouse, 15 meters, 5 meters, one shared chamber. On the left, a Viking family gathered around a glowing hearth, smoke drifting upward. Children nestled beside their elders, hands busy with food and flax. On the right, a modern family dispersed like satellites. The teen upstairs gaming with headphones. The toddler zoned out to YouTube. Parents on opposite couches, each in their own digital world. The camera lingers on firelight, warming a Viking child's face, then shifts to the icy blue glow of a screen washing over a modern one. A hand reaches for a stick of roasting fish. A finger scrolls past another video. They stitched life into one continuous rhythm, eating, sleeping, mourning, birthing, all within each other's breath. We've gained space, but lost intimacy. Convenience, but less cohesion. An overhead view morphs floor plans. The Viking hall like a breathing lung, open, alive. The modern home becomes a tidy spreadsheet, cell after cell, ordered and isolated. A Viking child stirs in their sleep. 3 arms reach to soothe. In a modern home, a child cries behind a bedroom door. The sobs are muffled on the other side. Someone wears noise-cancelling headphones. In splitting our homes into silent chambers, did we fracture something deeper? Time-lapse rolls. One modern house dims, room by room, blue light blinking out, hallway shadows thickening. A Viking Longhouse, a single fire, steady through night. Shadows shift, but no one is alone. They lived every hour within each other's breath. We live apart behind walls, thinner than they seem. They lived side by side with their livestock, beneath a turf roof, layered thicker than a winter cloak, yet within that single chamber. They achieved something astonishing. Warmth, airflow, order. A turf cap, nearly 2 feet deep, trapped the heat of one fire through the longest nights. A narrow smoke hole above acted like a primitive HVAC, drawing smoke upward while letting warmth settle. Along the longhouse walls, benches rose in tiers. Those higher up slept warmer, while animals below added their own breath to the mix. A cutaway reveals it. The structure like a living lung, exhaling through rafters, inhaling through that central fire. Think of it as one room, 10 functions, says Dr. Lena Valtanen, a Viking architectural historian. Every beam had intent, from the first flint spark in darkness to the last whisper before rest. The longhouse pulsed with routine. Sleep came in shifts, segmented and soft, often broken by storytelling or quiet work. Children stirred beside looms. Bread was mixed a few feet from the beds. A woman spun wool, while 2 toddlers dozed at her feet. A boy ground grain, while his grandfather dozed, both of them blanketed by smoke and sound. The loom clacked gently in one corner. The fire cracked. The house breathed. But it wasn't just function, it was culture. These were not lawless halls. Hierarchy guided every gesture. Guests entered with rites. Elders sat by the warmest tier. Disputes were settled, not outside but within, seated on conflict benches, where the presence of others discouraged dishonor. The hall itself became a moral compass. The seat facing the door, reserved for the Jarl. The fire's edge, a place for stories and judgment. Guest right meant safety. The hearth meant order. The roof meant shared fate. Over the next hour, we'll walk through these smoky sanctuaries, not to romanticize, but to understand. We'll meet the builders, the brewers, the mothers and smiths, who made this more than shelter. This wasn't rustic living, it was engineered belonging. So step through the door, into sawdust and soot, steam and shadow, into the hum of breath and ember, into a house that was never just timber and turf, but the architecture of survival. A drone glides over a coastal hillside, its lens catching faint outlines buried under turf. Longhouse ruins, barely visible to the naked eye. But through thermal imaging, secrets flare into view. Glowing hot spots mark where hearths once blazed, doorways broke frost, and warmth was channeled through chambers of earth and timber. Beneath moss and silence, the architecture still breathes. Here, warmth clung to the bones of the building long after its people were gone. Survival, literally coded into structure. Builders began with oak timbers and packed earth. The skeleton of each home was strong and flexible, anchored to ground that heaved with freeze and thaw. Then came the turf sliced from meadows, stacked in overlapping layers 2 feet thick. Not just shelter, but insulation. Sod tiles heavy with moisture were pressed tight, making a skin that repelled wind, trapped heat, and dampened noise. These walls had insulation values comparable to modern energy-efficient homes, a narrator explains. Imagine a passive house, rooted in Viking ingenuity. Each sod slab carried weight, literal and symbolic. Shelter, yes, but also a form of landscape stewardship. The home rose from the land it depended on. At the top of the house, a single roof pole held the weight of every rafter. Around that axis, the roof pitched steeply, and at its peak, an open smoke hole vented the fire below. Rain rolled off turf sides. Smoke found the sky. There was no chimney, only this narrow opening, which created a steady draw, allowing smoke to hover high, above heads but within reach. A house with no soot-choked ceiling, no cough-inducing it, a breathing organism. That smoke did more than vent, it cleaned. Insects were repelled. Bacteria were burned off surfaces. Thatch and wood dried evenly, lasting longer. The hearth wasn't a hazard, was a purifier. In the center, the fire sat low, on a stone plinth. Carefully chosen stones absorbed and radiated heat. Ash fell and was collected, sifted into medicinal washes, cleaning lye, garden enrichments. Nothing was wasted. Smoke and flame weren't byproducts. The voice continues. They were infrastructure. Infrared reconstructions show how heat traveled from that core outward, upward. The benches along the walls, raised in tiers, collected the warmth like steps of a solar battery. Elders slept on the topmost platforms, where it was warmest and driest. Children nestled beneath, closer to chores and cooking. Privacy, warmth, rancor layered into the bench design. These weren't crude bunks. They were thermal hierarchies. Sound behaved differently here, too. The upper tiers heard less, while the lower ones remained in the pulse of work and story. They designed thermal zoning into sleeping arrangements. The narration explains. Function sculpted belonging. Even the materials spoke of clever necessity. Oak and pine were gathered nearby. Rush and moss padded floors. In coastal settlements, driftwood and whalebone replaced timber rafters. Sodaptation at scale. Hands smooth cured moss across a floor beam. Whale ribs arch across ceiling like cathedral vaults. These homes were built from what was abundant, not imported, the narrator says. That meant every village had a distinct architectural dialect spoken in pine knots and sod curves, and they weren't static. Maintenance was a ritual. Hearths were swept daily, smoke holes cleared weekly. Thatch was patched seasonally, often with family gathered, part work, part ceremony. At Lofiter, archaeologists uncovered repeated rethatching layers, one atop another, spanning generations. A home wasn't built once. It was born, lived in, repaired, and reborn. Dr. Marcus Felton appears on screen, brushing dust from a stone floor section. The Viking Longhouse, he says, was a single-room, passive home, energy efficient, socially dense, and community-centered. Beside him, Dr. Lena Valtonen gestures to a post hole deep and burned. You see the soot that's from ritual cleaning fire. Not just accidents, intentional purges. Their voices overlap with slow footage of excavation. Soil peeled back to reveal post holes, bench anchors, ash pits. A rhythm emerges. Every structure matched a human pattern. Structures shaped life and life shaped structures. The longhouse wasn't just a place to sleep. It was the boundary between inside and out, self and kin, now and before. Built for winter, but made to hold spring memories. Made for smoke and sweat, but designed for singing, weaving, storytelling. As night falls, the screen shifts to a fully reconstructed longhouse rendered in glowing 3D. Inside, embers pulse, orange-red. People move slowly, laying out furs, adjusting wood on the fire. One person coughs softly. A dog yawns. A kettle hisses. Thermal overlays show heat distribution. Core glowing, benches warm, thresholds cool. A child rolls over. The fire holds. As night deepens, the narrator whispers, we begin to see how living was scripted in timber and how fire, carefully held, kept it all alive. The camera moves gently through the space over wool-wrapped shoulders, across stone floors, between drying herbs and hanging tools. One space, many lives. Shared warmth, shared breath. Through ember and smoke, structure and community fused, not just a dwelling, a survival system. At 5 a.m., the first light of dawn filters through slits in the smoked glass shutters, diffusing across packed earth and wall-draped forms. Ragnar blinks away sleep, bare hands stiff with cold as he kneels by the hearth. Embers pulse faintly beneath birch ash. He feeds them dry twigs and a heavy log, coaxing them until sparks leap toward the smoke hole above. Smoke and warmth chase out the stillness. Astrid pads in softly, placing more scintillated benches near the fire to prepare for cooking. A puppy yawns and stretches beside the coals, tail thumping once before curling again. A child turns under reindeer pelts, breath slow, toes tucked into wool. The fire stirs life into the longhouse, heating its bones, its bodies, its day. By the time steam lifts from the firestones, Ragnar has laid out flatbread rounds, pressing them into place with calloused fingers. The dough sizzles softly as moisture meets hot rock. Astrid stirs barley porridge in a bronze cauldron suspended from the ceiling hook, its base haloed with low flame. A drift of flour catches the firelight, dusting the air. This is no feast. It's sustenance fuel to mend, thatch, shape, iron, teach children. Each loaf holds more than grain. It carries heat, hope, continuity. The smell of nutty barley mixes with the faint, sweet bark of birch. It's warm, familiar hope. By the hearth, Astrid pulls her lap loom closer. Smoke curls around her as she threads natural dyed wool into tight warp strands. The shuttle clicks between her fingers. Nearby, the smallest child mimics the motion with twine and stick. Threads bridge more than cloth, they connect work to survival. Color to memory, woman to lineage, blankets, sails, bands for the dead. Cloth is story and substance. Eric's hammer interrupts the rhythm. He's bent over his anvil, shaping horseshoes red with heat. Sparks scatter into the smoky air, dancing like insects in twilight. Bellows sigh at his side. Each blow rings across the hall. His forge is no annex, it's within the longhouse itself. Heat feeding heat, noise echoing off plank and bone. Ironwork smells of sweat, ash, and purpose. Children, ringed in smoke and giggles, carve small runes into scrapwood. Their knives scratch gently. Astrid guides them, tracing the arc into memory with soot-blackened fingers. This is schooling, not in silence, but in rhythm. Education here smells of smoke and barley, and sounds like a child whispering the shape of F. The fire's rhythm slows as noon approaches. Sod shifts above. A cold draft creeps in. The family climbs to the roof. Moss is gathered, old turf peeled back. Shingles are hammered in place, hands numb, eyes stinging from sun and soot. They press sod tiles with reverence, sealing out weather, sealing in life. Downstairs, lunch waits, fish and barley porridge, ladled into shared bowls. The food is soft, salted, warmed by fire and quiet words. Wooden spoons clack gently. Steam rises and mingles with breath. No feasting, no flourish. Just unity. Just enough. Afterward, the fire lulls them into pause. Elders recline on upper-tier benches, furs pulled to their chins. Moss mats are pressed against their backs to soothe smokery lungs. The light through the smoke hole is hazy, golden, like dreamstill. Sleep here is short, soft, necessary, not indulgent, essential. Ingrid moves among them, bowl in hand. Nettle and ash poultices for scraped knees and winter rashes. She rubs ointment across thin skin, humming under her breath. Another child sips herbal tea, nettle, wild mint, and the ghost of elderflower. In this house, healing doesn't come from silence. It comes from attention. As the sun tilts low, a pot of stew bubbles over the hearth. Barley, fish, preserved root vegetables. Steam carries the scent of rosemary and dill, dried in summer and saved for depth. The longhouse gathers. Cups of small beer are passed hand to hand. A toast, quiet and habitual. The meal begins. Dinner isn't just nourishment, it's negotiation. Between bites, voices raise and lower. A man accuses a neighbor of overstepping a boundary. A woman insists guest right was ignored. A debt is acknowledged and repayment discussed. Children go quiet, watching the dance of justice. The moot benches creak under weight. Elders listen. Words matter here. Truth must fit within breath and boundary. Disputes are not sent away. They are settled within the glow of the hearth, witnessed by all, tempered by heat and kin. As dusk folds the day, first sleep begins. Furs are pulled close. The hearth dims but does not die. Some drift off immediately, others linger, trading dreams, small memories, silent gazes. The longhouse breathes as one. Midnight comes. One family member rises to tend the fire. A log is added. Coals stirred. Sparks rise again. Astrid murmurs from half-sleep, recounting a dream, an eagle flying low, white-flecked wings brushing barley. Ingrid nods and records the omen. In dreams, they forecast weather, chores, trouble. They are stories and warnings folded in sleep. The night watch is soft, silent. The crackle of fire, the faint sigh of fur shifting, the breath of babies and beasts in harmony. Astrid hums a lullaby without words, just tone, just rhythm. Smoke drifts upward like a ribbon of memory. The fire holds, and the house sleeps together, always together. A carved table stretches the length of the longhouse, runes etched deep from generations past. Around it, kin and strangers sit shoulder to shoulder, elbows brushing as bowls are passed hand to hand. Flames from the hearth flicker across fur-lined cloaks, warming fingers clasped in greeting. Laughter rolls through the room like smoke. Here, your neighbors were your kin, and your bonds ran as deep as the foundation timbers beneath your feet. One guest, newly arrived and travel-worn, is offered the high seat placed near the fire, handed the first spoonful, honored without question. It is not courtesy, it is survival. A stranger welcomed today may be a shield brother tomorrow. To reject them is to court ruin. When Alpha, the stranger, appears at the door, his presence quiets the room. No one asks his origin, not yet. His horse is stabled. A bench is cleared. A bowl is filled. The host's own son rises to make space. Alpha's law is invoked. Hospitality is sacred. A guest is owed not just shelter but protection. Refuse it, and one risks more than shame. Saga tales speak of exile, blood feuds sparked not by battle but by a bowl never offered. Under the smoke-hole sky, justice, too, finds breath. A goat has gone missing. Voices rise, fingers point, accusations flare. Then the Gogi, the chieftain, raises a hand by the hearth. Silence falls. Disputes aren't settled with steel. Not here. They are hashed out in heat and in witness. Oaths sworn over flame, restitution agreed in livestock or silver. A clay bowl is passed. Hands clasp over it, sealing peace. An axe hangs above the fire not to threaten, but to remind. Authority lives in presence. Justice is watched, heard, and shared. In the space beyond the table, labor unfolds in rhythms as steady as breath. Astrid works the loom near the hearth. The clack and pull of threads, a song in itself. Outside, Ragnar drives cattle toward shelter, his boots crunching frost. Inside, women stir mead, count stored grain, mix salves for winter sores. Men mend fence posts, repair harnesses. There is no shame in switching roles. Come snow, all tend livestock. When danger comes, all fight. Labor divides, but cooperation stitches it back together. No task too small, no role untouched by firelight. Children do not idle. One carves a spoon beside the baker. Another stirs dye with a stick. Eirik the smith calls a boy to test iron's hue-titching heat by glow, not gauge. Each child becomes apprentice simply by being present. Learning is not confined, it is lived. Lessons taught in wrist movement, in patience, in the repetition of useful things. As shadows stretch, voices shift from work to story. A skald stands near the fire, torch in one hand, tale in the other. He speaks of ancestors, of vengeance and honor, of wolves in birch forests, and lovers lost at sea. Children hush, elders nod. Stories are more than escape. They're the scaffolding of memory, lore, pride. Every saga recited preserves genealogy. Every verse teaches the penalty for broken vows. The myths aren't distant, they are social glue, cautionary tale, and map for the living. In one corner, a minor spat erupts over a portion of meat. Before voices swell, a woman rises. She speaks with slow clarity. Her words slice softer than a blade, but land with more weight. The hall listens. The dispute dissolves. No title crowns her, no law backs her voice, but her authority is felt earned through years of quiet governance. She's keeper of grain, weaver of hearth order, mentor to daughters. Power here is not shouted, it is steadied, layered in practice and presence. This is the Longhouse in full rhythm, each wall catching sound, each moment thick with meaning, the smell of dough rising, the touch of wool on skin, the flick of an axe above the door. Skilled hands and sharp minds intertwine. Guests sip, dogs snore. An elder sharpens a knife by the smoke hole's glow. Sigrun Halvorsen, anthropologist, appears by the fire's edge. The Longhouse was a micro-society, every task and dispute played out under one roof. Here there are no corridors, no locked doors. Everything labor, justice, story, unfolds in shared breath. And when the flames finally settle, and the children curl under furs, the last voice heard is not command, not complaint, but lullaby. In that single room, life's tapestry is woven, threads of kin, craft, and counsel entwined. Smoke curls upward, warm faces blur into one tapestry of memory, and the Longhouse sleeps. The camera glides through a digitally rendered cross-section of a Viking Longhouse. Turf walls cradle timber beams. Warm light flickers from the hearth as air currents swirl, invisible but choreographed. Beneath the rustic veneer lay subtle luxuries, cloaked in turf but ingenious in design. Up at the roof's peak, a leather-wrapped pole creaks as an elder pulls a strap. The smoke hole opens wider. A column of smoke lifts and thins. She lowers the pole, rain rolls off. She raises it, smoke escapes, heat lingers. This wasn't just a hole in the roof. It was breath-adjustable, responsive, vital. The roof exhaled on command. A kind of pre-modern HVAC, tuned by instinct. On either side of the hearth, tiered benches stretch the length of the hall. A mother tucks her children into the high bench first, pulled snug. Elders settle on mid-levels. At the lowest tier, near the stone plinth, someone weaves in the smoky warmth. No thermostats here, just gradient zones, heat layered like social strata. The warmest, highest perch went to the smallest and most vulnerable. Below, work continued in the haze. This was thermal zoning, ancient and intuitive. Comfort wasn't imposed, it was arranged. Beneath the hearth, a depression in the packed earth is lined with stone. Through the day, fire bakes the stones. At dusk, the flames lower but warmth lingers. Hours later, when the night howls, the floor still sighs with stored heat. The house remembers. Heat absorbed in daylight slowly rises again, like a second fire in the bones of the earth. Near the wall, light slants in not through glass, but oiled hide. Thinned and stretched from animal skin, it filters the sun to a soft gold. No glare, just glow. At the door, goat hair curtains hang thick. They stir slightly with wind, but hold the chill at bay. Within, voices stay hushed, the curtain guarding privacy like a spell. Light wasn't bright here, it was gentle. Privacy wasn't partitioned, it was woven. Along the outer wall, a small porch shelters an unseen detail, a latrine bench carved into the timber, discreet, accessible, even in winter. The breeze carries waste away. No stench lingers. Hygiene wasn't improvised. It was integrated, carved into architecture, not tacked on. Outside, ash is scooped from the hearth and layered over refuse. Burnt bones, once broth makers, are now gathered in sacks. At the forge, those same bones glow orange, slowly releasing heat. The ash helps clean the iron. Even waste had a second life. Every ember, every scrap, was called back to purpose. Nothing discarded, everything cycled. In a wide shot, we see the longhouse not as a shack but as system, each part feeding another. Moisture controlled through thatch and draft. Light diffused through skin and smoke. Heat rotated through time and tears. Professor Marcus Felton. These homes were living machines, balancing moisture, heat, and light with raw materials. Dr. Ingrid Falk, environmental engineer. We call it passive design now, but they lived it. Zero energy, full function. Data overlays animate atop the structure. Airflow spiraling from hearth to roof. Heat maps radiating from floor depressions. Sunlight tracing slow arcs through oiled hide. A child draws a curtain closed. The fire flares. A draft whirls upward. In the longhouse, comfort was not absent, it was hidden. Beneath turf and soot and smoke was flow. Curtains draw shut. Bench furs rustle. Steam curls from a pot. These weren't crude shelters. They were finely tuned ecosystems of survival and solace. The final shot is near silent. A breeze flickers across oiled hide, the glow of embers fades to warmth. Comfort lived here in form, in fire, in function. A house not only built for life, but built of it. A family gathers in the longhouse for Yule. Sprigs of juniper hang overhead. Wreaths of evergreens frame doorways, and bowls of ale steam softly. In the longhouse, daily life and ritual were inseparably every meal, every hearth mantling, every sleep. A child lights a small Yule candle. Laughter echoes over clinking wooden mugs. This was celebration and survival against winter's dark. Community chose light and warmth. Hog is roasted before the hearth, ale brewed in tart cauldrons, shared by kin and stranger alike. Yule was reborn each roast, each cup polished the bonds holding people through midwinter's gloom. Flames lick spit-roasted meat, steam rises from beer vats, faces glow in firelight. This feast wasn't indulgence, it was psychological armor, forging joy in bleakness. Comfort was woven by shared ritual, not just food. When snow retreats, the hearth is cleaned, and an effigy is burned to invite sunlight. Straw is spread across floors. It wasn't domestic, it was renewal, rebirth, welcoming light. Flames consume a straw doll. Smoke drifts against thawed beams. Spring rites were psychological resets, a collective cleansing of winter's hold. Houses and hearts were renewed in tandem. The first cuts of roasted meat are placed in the smoke hole, offered to land spirits. Food entered not just bodies, but the supernatural, anchoring mutual respect. Fingers lay meat into the opening. Smoke curls over sacrificial morsels. Offerings were not superstition, they were pacts with place and power. Dinner became diplomacy with the unseen. At midnight, after first sleep, the household wakes to share dreams. Elders interpret omens. Dreams guided decisions, travel plans, alliances, harvests. Firelight flickers over sleepy faces. Hush punctuates a lapse in breathing. In those dream hours, psychological maps were drawn, domestic guidance from the night. Sleep became ceremonial, a collective subconscious gathering in embers. Runic symbols are carved above the door. Salt and ash are circled around hearth edges. These were shields not for castles, but for hearts. Fingers press letters into wood. Salt lines glisten in low light. Every rune, every grain of ash, spoken and strewn to guard the vulnerable. The longhouse was a sanctuary, psychic and physical. A final montage shows embers glowing, shadows dancing, food passed, stories uttered. They wove security, binding psyche to place, fear to faith. Every ember held a prayer, every shadow a story. The longhouse was more temple than timber. Children clutch mugs. Livestock rest safely near walls. Smoke rises like incense. Here, comfort was crafted not by walls but by rituals woven into every act. Dawn breaks over frost-silvered earth. Inside the longhouse, embers glow faintly under a soft layer of ash. A hand reaches in, gently stirring coals until sparks flicker upward like tiny resurrections. Under turf and timber, they built homes of heat, hearth, and human connection, generous shelters against a ruthless winter. Ragnar lifts the lid on a stone pot nestled into warm stones. Steam spills out, curling into the air as Astrid steps close, children gathering sleepily beside her. The scent of nettle porridge mingles with peat smoke. A modern architect steps into a reconstructed longhouse. Her breath catches heat, clings to the wood. The air is thick with memory. She removes a glove, palm hovering above the hearthstone. In every plank, joint and peat sod lay centuries of lived wisdom, to gather, to share, to endure. Perhaps our homes could learn from their longhouses' single, roaring heart. Close by the fire, a cat stretches. A child yawns. A ladle stirs clockwise through thick barley, and someone laughs softly, the sound like a bridge between centuries. Tonight, gather close, stoke your own hearth, and remember, Home is more than shelter, it's the bond that keeps us alive. A slow pan lifts upward, threading past rafters and the rising tendrils of smoke. The camera glides through the smoke hole and out into the crisp morning air. The longhouse roof steams gently under the first touch of sun.